Hello everyone, welcome to Coding Jitsu channel. Today we're going to learn about React. We're going to first talk about what React is, how React works, and should you care about learning React, what the jobs prospects look like, what are their salaries, all that good stuff. And then we will dive into the meat of the video where I will show you how you can create your first React project. This video should give you the very basics of React. So by the end of this video, you should be able to create your own to-do app with class component using React and also functional component with useState hook. And if this sounds good to you, then grab a refreshment because it might be a long video. All right, so before we start, please, if you like this video, give me a like and share. It does help with the YouTube algorithm for this video to reach out to more people. And if you're not subscribed, consider subscribing because I'll be making videos just like this. All right, so without further ado, let's get going. So I do have a to-do here to help with this video. So first we're going to talk about what React is. So Reactjs. So React is a free and open source JavaScript library. It is maintained by Meta, formerly Facebook, and a community of individual developers and companies. Initial releases was in May 29, 2013. All right, so let's go to reactjs.org, their documentation. React, a JavaScript library for building user interfaces. All right, so the first one is declarative. So React makes it painless to create interactive UIs, design simple views for each state in your application, and React will efficiently update and render just the right components when your data changes. So in React, data is called state. The second thing about React is component based. So let me show you what component actually means if you don't know. So Khan Academy is one of the organization website that I love. You can learn a tons of things in here for free, and Khan Academy website is built with React. So here, as you can see, there is a navigation, there is the main section right here, and then at the bottom there is a footer. So each component, each section could be a component. So this footer could be a component, this main section could be another component, this nav here could be another one. So when you have lots of developers like Facebook had, you can actually isolate this component that like specific developers will only work on this footer section. Let me go back to what it says. So components are built encapsulated components that manage their own state, then compose them to make complex UIs. So these are completely separated. They have their own state, they have their own data, but at the end, they all come together to form this whole web page. So this is called components. So each section could be a component, all right? I think of it as like a puzzle, and each piece would be like a component. And when you gather everything, it will be the full puzzle, all right? So the third one is, this is one of the biggest reason you want to learn React, is learn once, write anywhere. So React can also render on the server using Node. So React is a client-side UI JavaScript library, but React can also create server-side rendering through Node.js. And one of the example is Next.js, which is a framework for production based on React, and they utilizes React's server-side capabilities using Node.js and also React Native. So if you want to create an application, a mobile app on Android devices, you probably would have to choose either Java or Kotlin. If you want to create iOS app, you would have to know Swift as a programming language. But with the help of React Native, you can write mobile apps using JavaScript, and it will work on both operating systems. It will work on iOS and it will also work on Android. That's how powerful React Native is. All right, so let's take a look at the jobs. So Indeed.com is a very famous, popular job search engine in United States, in North America. And if I search React, as you can see, there are 70,483 jobs available. And in LinkedIn, where nowadays many technological companies are actually looks like exclusively hiring through LinkedIn, they have about 156,116 results that is coming in for search in LinkedIn. And what about the salary? So this is a Glassdoor, and this is just the base pay. You get a lot more like cash bonus and stock options and stuff like that. But the base pay average is about 81,765. So as you can see, React is in high demand. Companies are willing to pay a lot of money for React developers. So it makes it almost like a no-brainer, especially if you're a front-end developer, to know React. All right. Okay, if that makes sense to you, let me go ahead and dive into actually knowing React and coding React. Now, let me show you how React actually works. So in a traditional way, you go to a browser, you put in an address, www.reactjs.org in this case, okay? And then once you press enter, your browser does a GET request. It establishes a connection with the server and does a GET request. It's basically saying that, hey, I'm looking for this reactjs.org. Do you have any HTML page for this? And it goes to a server, and the server looks for that address and responds if it finds it with the home page or index.html page to that, and then browser then shows it. All right, so every time you're going to a different page, so let's say I'm going right now on contact page, it's going to establish a connection, do the GET request for contact page this time. Server is going to look for the contact HTML, gives back the index HTML that's for contact, and then browser will show that. It's gonna keep happening for every page that you click until the browser is caching that. All right. So in this process, you can see the problem is now the browser going to show you the web page, and that actually depends on this connection, and this connection actually depends on two things. One is your internet speed. So if your internet speed is really slow, that connection, making that connection, sending this data over from server to the web page will take more time. And also, if your location is very far away from the server, it will also going to hamper, how fast the website loads onto your browser. So here, React kind of solved this problem. First page, it works exactly the traditional way. You write in reactjs.org, and then it does a GET request, it goes to a server, and then come back with the index HTML, which is the home page. And then browser will show this, and this will happen just once. Okay, so the page will just be one page. Oftentimes it's called single page application, that's why. And after that, React's basically gonna take over. And this is what React was gonna do. React is going to create a carbon copy of the document, of the DOM, and it's called a virtual DOM, just a carbon copy of that. All right. So as you can see here on the regular DOM, HTML head, body, header, main, footer, it's going to have React virtual DOM will also have this. The next time, now let's say you are trying to go to an about page, since React is only going to make that connection once. That's why it's called single page application. So in the about page, think about that only thing that needs to change is that main section. The header doesn't need to change. The footer doesn't need to change. So that's why the virtual DOM React actually compares. And here, what it does is so when you click on that about page, it recognizes, okay, the only thing I need to update is the main, and then it just creates on the fly, just like you are creating an element through like vanilla JavaScript, like document.create element. It creates all the content for the about page. So it doesn't really have to go to the server. It just creates that on the fly about page. So where traditional way, you have to go to server, find this and come back, all this routes. With React, this route never happens, making your web page much more faster than the traditional way. All right, hopefully that makes sense. And now let's take a look at how can you start with React. Well, there are two ways you can start with React. One is online. I'm on codesandbox.io. This is an online, just like CodePen if you ever coded on there. Code Sandbox is like that. It has the Visual Studio Code editor built in, and that is awesome. My preferred editor is Visual Studio. Doesn't mean that you have to also code in that. You can code in any editor you like. In the Code Sandbox though, you don't have to download anything, like no NPM package, no React Webpack Babel, nothing like that. It lives on the internet. As long as you have a computer and an internet connection, you can code away from anywhere. So this is the first one. You can write your first React app. Another one, which is the production level way is through create React app, which actually set up a modern web app by running one command through your local machine. And that's what we're going to do through create React app. So this create React app gets updated all the time. Some of the engineers that worked on React also work on create React app. So it is very reliable, and that's what we're going to use. We are going to use our terminal to create npx, create React app, and my app. npx, so we will be using Node. So in order for us to use create React app, we have to have Node.js installed in our computer. Hopefully that is super easy. So all you have to do is go to Node.js. First, you have to go to your terminal and do node -- version. And it should give you a version number. And if it doesn't give you a version number, that means you do not have Node.js installed, and you would need that. So just go to Node.js, and you can download either the current one or the long-term support one, which is 16 right now. And you'll be able to run this command from there. All right, so hopefully right now we have Node.js installed in our system. So let's go ahead and install React app. So with this command line, so we're going to copy this, and we're going to go to our terminal and paste it. So what's happening? So npx is just like npm in your node. npx is something that it actually installs something, it runs something. It's an executable, yeah? And then this is what it's executing, this command line, create React app. Now it's going to download everything from the internet and put this in this folder, which is just a folder name, my app. You can name it whatever you like. If you don't want to include any folder, if you're already in the folder, and if you want to just download everything in your current folder, then just pass a dot and it's going to download everything in the folder that you're currently in. I'm actually going to just create a subfolder called my app, and in there everything will be downloaded. So I'm going to press enter, and it's going to take a while, so I'm going to pause and come back. All right, so it's been installed, and React is suggesting us to go to the my app folder and then doing npm start. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to cd into my app, and then I'm in my app right now, and I'm going to do npm start and see what happens. It's going to open a local server in localhost 3000 in my computer. And you see, this is your first React app. Okay, so it's been installed. Now all this you're seeing right now is coming from the boilerplate. So I am going to open another terminal here and go to navigate to the project folder. And it's in my app. And from here, I'm going to say code space dot, and that will open all the files in my Visual Studio Code right here. I'll be using Visual Studio Code. You can use whatever editor you like. All right, I'm going to first make things a little bit bigger, so easy to follow. I'm going to make it 30. And as you can see here, we have some folders. Okay, so let's go from the bottom. So we have a README file, and in the README file, we have some general information from React. Okay, so available script, you can do npm start, which will start our local server, and it has hot reloading. So every time we change anything and we save, it's going to auto refresh for us. It is going to open in localhost 3000 port. So you can read the rest of it on your own time. The next one we are looking at is a package.json. So this package.json file, it have all the dependencies that needs for React app to actually work. So as you can see here, the name, it actually takes the folder name. You can change the name, whatever you like. You can also change the version. And here are the dependencies. So as you can see here, the testing library Jest DOM. Jest is a testing library that is also built by Facebook engineers. So that's why they actually include Jest in their program. And then we have our React and for testing. And then this is our core. So as you can see, we are using React 17.0.2, which is the latest one. We also have the React DOM, which is responsible for creating the virtual DOM that we talked about earlier. We have React scripts, we have web vitals, And these are the script. So start, so when we say npm start, it runs this React script start. When we run npm build, it runs this, and then test and eject right here. We also have ESLint config. So this is really, really great because every time we do any mistakes or anything, it yells at us, give us what's wrong with it, and also give us which code and which package we should look into. All right. Okay, so after that, we have our package log JSON that's just automatically created from the package JSON. So we don't really have to, we don't really ever go into the package log JSON file. So let's take a look at the git ignore. So git ignore is the files that when we are going to push our work to GitHub repository, we want to exclude certain things. For example, the first thing you see, the node modules. So here is the folder node modules at the very top. And if you click on here, you see that it's a massive folder of like all the dependencies that React needs. Everything is saved in this node modules. So we never want to push it to our GitHub repository. So that's why we're including it automatically. It's coming from Create React App, which has node modules included in the git ignore, some other stuff that like our env environment variables that you don't really want to share publicly. So these are all here for you. All right, so the next folder is source folder. We're going to talk about source folder at the end because most of our work is actually going to be in the source folder. So let's talk about the public folder, what we have here. So here, as you can see, the first one is a favicon icon, and this is the icon is responsible for the logo right here at the tab. So if you want to change that with your own logo or your icon, you can just replace that with this and call it favicon icon. And it's going to change it for you. This is the index HTML file. That is the one page that we described earlier that it does. That's why it's called single page. It does traditional way of get the response for the first index page. And this is that index page right here. So as you can see right now, there are lots of comments. You can delete them if you want to. But most important here, other than all the meta link head and everything, the most important is that in the body, you would see that we only have one div right here, which has an ID of root. So this is the div, parent div, that everything that we create in the source folder through our JavaScript, the elements, all the content of the page, will be creating through JavaScript and will be appending to this div right here. Okay, ID root. That's why this is, we only need one div. All right, let's go back here. And then we have this PNG logo, different sizes. We won't ever need this because they are just manifest.json is basically for a progressive web app. So we won't be using this much. So I'm going to close this public folder. Now let's get to the source folder. So the first thing I'm going to do, since we are not going to bother ourselves with testing, we are going to delete some files. So I'm going to delete the setup.test.js file, and I'm going to delete the app.test.js. These two things, I'm going to shift delete this completely. Okay, so another one we are going to do is the logo.svg, and this is the logo that is spinning right here. And you can take a look by going to index.css, and I believe it is in app.css that has the keyframes app logo spin that is actually spinning. We don't actually going to bother about this one either, so I'm going to go ahead and delete this. I'm going to go ahead and delete the logo as well, because we're going to start our own project. We're going to start from the scratch. All right, so I'm going to delete everything that comes with the boilerplate. So I'm going to delete logo SVG, and notice that it's already giving you some error. And this is one of the best case for React, working in React, is because anytime you're doing any mistakes, it actually gives you hint where to look at and also yells at you. So first of all, it's saying that in source folder in index.js, module not found, which is report web vitals. Of course, it's not found because I just deleted it. There's another one that is saying that the logo is not found because, again, I deleted it. All right, so Let's keep going. Let's go to the index.js here. Let's explain a little bit from here. Now, let's fix that. I am going to delete this report web vitals because we deleted it. We don't need it anymore. I'm also going to delete all this comment here like that. All right, so what's happening? Okay, so for index.js, the first line means that we are importing React from the React package that we downloaded from internet. Okay, now this import from export and everything is happening through something called Webpack that is working behind the scene for React. So we can export a file, we can import a file in another file. So import React from React, the first thing we're going to do that. And then second one, we are also going to import React DOM from React DOM. This is another package that creates a virtual DOM for us. And this is just the variable that we are putting the package in. You can name it whatever you like, but the convention is you name it the same that you imported from. Okay, so React from React, React DOM from React DOM. This import index.css is just a CSS file right here. Another one you're looking at that we are importing app from app. So what is app? So app is this file right here, which is app.js. It's a JavaScript file, and this is called a functional component. Okay, so this is called a component, which is right here. As you can see, we're exporting from this space right here, export default app. And what is app? App is just a function. We are defining a function called app, and we are writing some HTML looking thing. We're going to talk about this also. This is called JSX, and we're just exporting this function from this file. And here, with the help of Webpack, we can import that app from the app folder right here. Okay, so this is actually, let's go back. And this is the HTML thing that you're looking at. This is it, what you were seeing on the site. You see that it has image source logo, which we deleted. That's why it's like you can't see it anymore. But all the P paragraph, source app, everything that's you are seeing on the web page, you were seeing on the web page, is coming from this component called app. Okay. All right. So we need that obviously because we want to append that to the div with an ID of root, and that's exactly what it's doing. I'm going to comment this one and I'm going to write it again just so that I can explain things better. So React DOM, since we are importing that, it gives us a function called render. Okay, it gives a function for render, and if I it takes two parameter. Okay, so React DOM.render takes two parameter. The first one it's gonna take is what we want to show on our web page. So which component we want to show on the web page, and the second parameter takes where do you want to append that, or where do you want to show it. So the first one, I'm going to say that this is the app, and component, this is how you write the component. And if you're dealing with component for the first time, it might look a little bit weird, but this is just how React syntax works. So if you want to use a component, this is how you're going to write it. So just an HTML tag, but it's going to be a single tag with closing. Everything in JSX, because that's what we are using, has to be self-closed. Okay, so the slash has to be there, even if you were using just one single tag. Okay, so this is how you write. So app, so that's what the first argument, that's what we want to show. And then comma, the second one is where do you want to show. Now this is just going to be vanilla JavaScript. We're going to say document dot get element by ID, and we know that we had an ID that is root. I'm going to close this one so you can see, and and we save it, and that's exactly what's happening here. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and comment this one and uncomment this, save it. You see the first one, we are doing the app component, and then comma, then we are appending to the root ID. I forgot that I don't have to use, because I usually use query selector. If you use get element by ID, you don't have to specify the hash or pound, because you're already saying that it's an ID. Okay, now you might be asking, what is this? What is React strict mode? So let's go to our React document, and search for strict mode, which is the first one right here. And this is a tool for highlighting potential problems in an application. Like fragment, strict mode does not render any visible UI. It activates additional checks and warnings for its descendants. So it's basically activates some more like error checking, error handling. So we're going to keep that. We're going to keep our react.strict mode here. And this is the component that we are actually showing up on the website. All right, so that is our index.js. And once you set this up, you are probably not going to come back to this page. All right. Okay. So index.css, that's simple. And then we got our app.js. Now here, let's just fix the problem first. Okay. The first problem is obviously we don't have the logo anymore. And I am going to delete everything here. All right, I'm going to delete everything here, and I'm going to just say h1 hello world. And if I save this, you see this, all the boilerplate codes are gone, fresh page. This is our project. And it's saying hello world. All right, so we are just importing one CSS file, which is right here, which has some basic CSS stuff. All right, let's talk about JSX for a bit. So here, this is h1 hello world is an HTML looking thing. So let's take a look at the document and see if we did not have JSX, how would we do things? How would it look like? So look at this example. Okay, so return. So this is another class. We're going to talk about class component in a bit. But here it's returning a div, and in here it's hello, and then curly braces, and then some like dynamic text here or content here. If we did not have JSX, which we can check off right here, you can see that we had to do things quite manually. We had to do react.createElement, which is kind of like document.createElement in JavaScript. So react.createElement, and then it's a function. It takes the first one which you want to create, which is a div, and then it takes another one which you have to say null, and then what is the text. Basically, you also have to put in a space manually. So things are going to be a lot more manual. So that's why JSX was created, so that it looks almost like HTML, what we trained on. This makes our life a lot more easier by using JSX. But JSX has a couple of differences than actual HTML. Well, let's talk about the first one. Let me go to the page right here. So as you can see here, the first one is like we have one element right now. So JSX can only return one parent element. Okay, can only return one parent element. Everything else will be inside of the parent element, and it will just automatically come with it, but it has to have a wrapper element. So this is what I mean. So let's say h1 hello world. Let me create another h1, and I'm going to say hello coding Jitsu viewers, like this. You see that lots of problems happening right here. Lots of problems happening. This is the squiggly line. If I hover over it, it gives you what's wrong with it. It's saying JSX expression must have one parent element. So if you have to write multiple elements, more than one, you always have to wrap it with another. It could be like a div, section, whatever. It has to be another element, wrapping element. So now you can see it's rendering just fine. All right. Now you might be asking, okay, div, it's not very semantic HTML. So React thought about it, and what React has something called like this: import fragment from React. Okay, and you can use this fragment instead of div, and you save this, it works the same. Now the easiest way is just don't use nothing, just the bracket itself. It's also going to work for you. And this is what I usually use, either div or this one. All right. I forgot to say one thing. As you can see here in the index.js, you had to import React. Now we are using the latest React 17.0.2. Any React application that is not 17, like 16, 15, anything that's below 17, you had to do something like this. You have to, every component that you create, you have to start with import React from React like this. Now with the modern React, you don't have to import React on every component anymore. Okay, so that's an improvement. Okay, so this is one thing with JSX. There's another thing with JSX is that because it's JavaScript, you can actually write JavaScript expression within this. So let's say I want to delete all this. In fact, I don't want to delete all this. I'm going to just here open up curly braces. So curly braces has meaning in JSX. Curly braces basically means that anything inside of this will work as a JavaScript expression. So basically it's a JavaScript console log. So it's going to compute things. All right. So for an example, if I write 10 plus 2, if I save this, you see that, I don't know if you're seeing this properly. Let me zoom in a little bit. You see that it's rendering 10 plus 2, just what would HTML would do, right? 10 plus 2. But if I wrap this 10 plus 2 with curly braces, now you see that color changed. Now if I save this, you see now it is 12. It's computing. So within these curly braces in JSX, you can write any JavaScript expression you like. You will see that we'll be using array methods like array.map, all those higher order functions within these curly braces. Okay. All right. There are a couple of other differences from JSX to HTML, and we're going to learn about them when we are actually going to be coding our to-do app. Okay. So let's get going then. We are going to talk about, after JSX, we're going to talk about what is component. Now, component, as you know, is piece of code, everything is just a JavaScript file. And in this JavaScript file, you will just define whatever you're working on. So if you are creating a navigation menu or navigation bar in React app, and you are creating a component, so you're going to say nav.js, and you're going to put all the navigation HTML, JSX, whatever functions or whatever into that component, and you will export that. So that's a component. Now there are two types of component in React. One is a functional component, which is you are looking at it right now. You just create a function app and then just a function, right? Another one is a class component. Now class component are ES6 class in JavaScript. So if you don't know what I mean, so let me go ahead and search MDN class. So let me make it a bigger. Okay, so classes in ES6 JavaScript. If you don't know what this is, you can go to this MDN web docs. I will give the link below and go read on it. This is how you are creating a class. Okay, if you are not, like, you never seen this, you are completely novice about this, don't worry, we are going to learn as we go. So there are two types of component. You can create functional component and also class component. Now about the class component are usually a little more complex and more code to write than functional component, especially with hooks. But the reason I still want to show you class component, even though most of the modern React projects you will see that everybody's using functional component with hooks. The reason is because class, when you write a class component, everything you're writing, that's ES6 JavaScript classes, which is transferable. Like, you're practicing classes in JavaScript and you can take that knowledge, apply somewhere else. Where in functional component and when you're using hooks, like use state or use effect, those hooks are only applicable for a React project. So the transferability of it's not there. So you cannot apply the use state or use effect hook anywhere else other than React application. Okay, but it makes writing code in React much more simpler and with much less code. So I wanted to show you both so you'll be comfortable with both, because there are lots of code, because hook is hook is newer. Class was started from the beginning with React, so hooks came out later. So you will see a lot of code that was written before hooks that is simply with classes. So I want you to understand, when you encounter such code, you should be able to read those code and contribute to those code as well. So that's why I'm going to spend some time explaining how class component works, and then we will build a to-do app based on that class component, and then we're going to do the same exact thing on functional component using use state. And that will kind of give you the comparison, and you can make the decision which one you like, because there are developers that do like class components, still working on class components to this day. All right, so let's go ahead and start our project then. To do that, we are going to talk about state. So I don't know if you remember, so in React, the first definition was it's declarative, right? Based on a state or data changes, React will render something. So let's see if we can render something based on a state. But first, I'm going to delete all this here. And if I save this, you see, and I'm going to go ahead and do import. This is how it used to be before 17, right? You have to do React, and in curly braces, you have to also get component class from React. And if you save this, and you can take a look that it is giving you all sort of errors, because in index.js, we are showing app, but app doesn't exist anymore. Nothing is actually getting exported out. So we are going to ignore that error for just now. And the first thing, okay, so we imported React and imported component. This is important. We need this in order for us to create a class component, because our class component that we're going to create is going to extend from the component that React gives us. And here we have to create a class. We're going to call this an app, and it's going to extends the component. So it used to be that you had to write it like this, React component, and then curly braces. And here it will give you a render method, and in the render method will have curly braces here as well, and it will return let's say an h1, which will say hello world, save. And at the end, we have to export this. So let's do this, export default app. So if I save this, you see that it's still giving me an error, because I don't actually have to do this. Actually, forgot the comma. All right, after export default, you see that it works. It gives us hello world. Now, because we are in modern React, we don't have to do this, and we don't have to say React. We just have to say component with a capital C, component with a capital C. Okay. One thing you have to understand, that whenever you are creating a component in React, you have to always start with capital letter. All right. Another one is that import and export. You see that default keyword. Now, whenever you are exporting just one thing out of a file, right? So here on this particular file, I'm exporting one thing, one class, which is app. That's why you're gonna put export default. If you are exporting multiple things, then you would just omit the default. You will just say export and then curly braces, and you can just export it that way. Multiple items, okay? So if it's just one thing you're exporting, then you have to use the keyword default. Okay, so hello world shows up. So here is a class component. Now the class component actually used to be the only component that could handle something called state, which is the data. Okay, depending on the data, the UI will change, right? So that state, it used to be that before hooks, that class component only could use state. So at this point, you don't see any state, and this is called a stateless component. Okay, but we're going to create a state, and I'm going to show you how, based on a state, you can render something. Okay, so to create a state, you have to have a constructor. It's a constructor, open parentheses, and then curly braces. And then the first thing, because we're extending from component, you have to call super on it. And here we are going to create our state. So state would be this dot state is equal to, is going to be an object. All right. And we are using this because we are in a class. So this dot state, so this refers to the object itself. So for this class, the state would be, let's create, and it's just a JavaScript object. We can create a property, just say message, and let's give it hello coding Jitsu viewers, and save it like this. And instead of hard coding this hello world right here, I can make now this h1 more dynamic by introducing a curly braces, and here we can render this message right here. Now this dot state is available here, so I will say this dot state dot message. That's what I want. Now if I save this, you see now it is changed. It is now showing hello coding Jitsu viewers. So that's how, based on a state, you are going to render something. And whenever you're working on a React application, first, like any type of changes that you are trying to create, any type of interactivity, think about state first. Think about, can I create a state, and based on that state, can I show something? Okay, these things are going to be much more clear when we are going to be coding. Okay, more stuff. So let's change this, and let's call this the task manager, because that's what we're going to build. All right, save. So we got our task manager here, and don't worry about the style. It's going to look rubbish, but mostly we are here to learn about React and not CSS. So that's why I'm not going to waste your time with lots of CSS stuff. The next one, what we want to create an input. Actually, we want to create somewhere like a form where our users will be able to create their task. So I'm going to say form from like this, and it's giving me a squiggly line or whatever. So that's why I'm going to, I'm going to create this. And if I save this, all good. We don't need action because we are going to control our form with our JavaScript. And form, here we want our label. And look at this. This is another difference from JSX to HTML, is that in HTML, you'd be using like for, right? Label for equals to, you'd give it a name. So we're going to give this a name of like to do. Now, for in JavaScript, since it's JSX, it's going to think that it's a for loop. So that's why you have to use HTML4 in this case instead of just for. All right, so this one's going to say to do. I'm not going to put anything. I'm just going to have a label, proper form right here. So I'm going to say input. And as you can see here as well, that input, you don't need this slash in HTML, but JSX you do. You need to close this. All right, so if I save this, we have a form right here. Nice. So in this form, let's do something. Let's add an ID first, and we're gonna give the same name as we did with the HTML4. So I'm gonna say to do. We are going to add a placeholder and say add to do. Okay, there you go. We are also going to have, because we would need to like submit this, so we're going to create a button which is going to say submit, or just add like that. Okay, so usually I like to, so when I try to create a mock or just starting with a React project, I like to create like the data. I like to like hard code it. I hard code the data first, show up on the page, and then make some changes according with it. So let's do that. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to create some sort of like a collection of the to-dos, right? Because there will be some collection that shows up here, and I'm gonna keep just adding that one after another. So there will be like a to-do list, a to-do array or something. Okay, so let's create a state here, and we're gonna just call this to-dos. Okay, and it's just going to be an array. All right, it's going to be an array. So basically it's gonna hold all the to-dos together. So I'm going to actually create an object, and I'm going to say, I'm going to call this a to-do. And in fact, there's so many to-dos. I'm going to call this like content, and the content will be the first to-do. Let's say learn React. Okay, and I'm going to do exactly the same thing, and let's say call it JSX save. So we have currently two to-dos right here. Okay, one is learn React and one is learn JSX. So, and these are like from states. So after the form, I want to show this. So let's create a div here. I don't need to create a div right here. I just want to create some separation. So in this div, I'm going to show this to do. Now, this is how I can do this. I can create first curly braces because I'm going to write some JavaScript. What I'm actually going to do, because to do is an array, I can map through each to do and show it to the page. All right, anything you are going to put in the return. So that's what this render method is doing. So render method is coming from the class and it's saying that, hey, render, this is what you render. So I'm going to say this dot state dot to-dos, right? That's a thing, right? So this dot state, and then we are going into the state and grabbing to-dos, and it's an array, so I can do map. It's going to give me a single to-do. Okay, and I'm going to return something because it's a map. I'm going to return a piece of JSX here. I'm going to return a list item. Okay, and then this list item will have, so this is going to be to do. Now remember, this also has to be in the curly braces because it's JavaScript, so it's going to be to do dot content, right? Because this is what we want to return, learn React. So if I do this and if I save this, you see that it is showing up. We got our learn React and learn JSX. All we are doing right here, that we created a piece of state, which is an array, and array has these two objects. One object with the property of content with the actual to-do that we want to render. We have two of them, and then we are going to the this.state.todos. We are mapping through it, which gives us single to-do because it's going to map each single one. And when we get this to-do, we're going to create a list item, and in there we're just going to we're going to show the content of that to-do here. Okay, awesome. So let me make this one bigger, and let me go ahead and inspect this, and let me go to the console here. Notice there is a warning. Okay, there is a warning that's coming because of React. It's actually showing, I don't know if you, okay, there you go, that's the warning, and it's telling you that each child in a list should have a unique key prop. Okay, so we're going to take care of that. So this is what's happening. So React has to know, as you know, that React actually created a carbon copy of the DOM, just like the original DOM. So it wants to know which list item, because it's going to create a bunch of lists, right, from the array. It wants to know which one is actually changed, right? So it has to keep track of it. That's why it says that it has to have a key, unique key for each one, so that it can track that. All right, so for that, let me give this property, like this object, another property called ID. And at this point, I'm just gonna give it a number is ID1, and I'm going to give this a property again, and this ID2. So at this point, this two to do that I have a unique ID. The first one has 1 and the second one has 2. And I'm going to put this key in the list. So I'm going to do it like this, and this is going to be curly braces because I'm rendering this some JavaScript. So I'm going to say todo.id. And if I save this, go back. No, not that one. I want inspect, and I want to go to console, and it is okay. There you go. I just had to refresh, so the errors is not there anymore. Don't worry about this one. It's coming from my ad block extension, so just disregard that. Now what we want to do is whatever we write here, we want to add this to this collection of array that we created in the state. All right, so how do we do this? The first thing is we have to grab whatever we are writing here. We have to put it in a variable somewhere, okay? And then have it available to push into this array. All right, so let's create another piece of state. Just for that, I'm gonna call this to do, and I'm gonna initialize this one, just an empty string. Okay, it's just going to be empty string because this is the variable I'm going to store. So I'm going to grab whatever here, and then I'm going to store this into this piece of state to do, and then when I'm going to press like at, this to do will be added to this list. Make sense? Okay, so let's just do that. The first thing we would like to do is in the input here we have an event listener call onChange, just like that. And in onChange equals to curly braces again, because we are going to now invoke a method. Now this method, whenever you are creating a method in React in class component, you have to say this dot, and I'm just going to call this, you can call it whatever you want. I'm just going to call it handle change. OnChange event. What's this OnChange event going to do? It's going to fire a handle change method. So, and this is a method because we are in a class. So handle change, you're going to create just like a function without the function keyword because it's a method. We are within a class. All right. So what this actually going to do? It's going to console log. Well, let's take an event here and console.log event. Now, if I save this, let's see if anything happens in the console. So I'm going to inspect this. I'm going to go again to the console here. And let's see if I write A, you see that it is firing an event, which is synthetic React event. And if I open this one, it has something called a target. So this is the target of that input. And if I further open it, it has a value property, which has a letter that we just put. All right, so we got what we needed. All right, so if we do clear this console, if we do instead event, so event has this target property, and in this target property, there is something called a value. So if I save this, and if I write something like this, you see that now it is all logging in the console. We have a way to grab what we have written in our form. All right. Okay, now one important thing about React class component. We are going to, this is what we want to do. We have this. We want to update this one with our to-do here. Okay, so we want to update this state. Now we never want to do something like this. We never want to go this dot state dot to do equal to, and then this one right here. That would be directly modifying the state, and we don't want to do that. It's not a variable, right? This is a state, and we don't ever want to directly modify this. What we want to do, and this is React give us a function. We have to say this dot set state, and this is a function here we're going to do, and this function gives us, what is this? This is an object, so I'm going to just create an object here, and now I can say to do, and then give this one property like this. Okay, now if I save this, see if anything happens. I'm actually going to, let me take a look, see if anything happens. Inspect. We're gonna go to the console here. If I write something, whoa, we got a lot of errors. Okay, so the first is a type error. Cannot read properties of undefined, reading set state. So at line 18, JavaScript line 18. So this is what's causing the problem. Now this is the problem right now. In a method, we are using this, but in this method, it does not have any idea what this is. Okay, which one, where this set state is coming from. So we have to bind this to the method. Okay, there is 3 ways you can do that. Okay, the first easier way you can do that is, I'm going to comment out this, is simply create an arrow function. And the arrow function will take the E. Oh, I forgot. I don't need to do the const here because it's a method. And then if I console log this to do and see if it actually gets updated. Save it. Now if I go to the inspect and console, let's see. There you go. You see that now it's not giving you the error. So if you want to create an arrow function like this, an arrow method like this, then you can do this. You can get away with the error. I want to go, this is my preferred way of doing things, is going by this way, just creating a method like this, okay? But I have to, in order for this to work, I have to bind this. Either I can do it right where I call the function by just doing this dot handle change dot bind parentheses. What I want to bind, I want to bind this. Now if I save this, and now if I just take this here and do this dot state dot to do like that, inspect, we have console. If I do this, you see now it's working. It works just fine because we binded this. Okay, it's basically, I'm saying that, hey, this basically means this is one. In the method itself, it did not have any idea what this is. Now there's the third way, which is what I do. This is what my preferred way when I build class component is that I, instead of binding this here in the handle change, I do it just in the constructor itself, just under the state. I just do this dot handle change equal to this dot handle change dot bind parentheses this, and if I save this, and let's take a look. Now this time I'm going to show you something. I do have a React developer tools. Okay, it's a Chrome extension. I'm using Edge, by the way, which is basically duplicate of Chrome. So you can download this one, and it gives you here more options. So you can actually go to component level, and you see that in app there is a to do right here. So if I write A, you see that immediately it changes. So you can see that your states through that extension. That's pretty cool. Very useful. I recommend you download this. So yeah, you can do this way. And this is my preferred way, simply because you can see all of your methods in one place, whether you actually bind this or not. All right. Okay, so let's get rid of the console log. And instead of writing to do like this, I can do something like here. So I'm going to open up like this, event.target.name, name, save. It's going to do the same thing. It's not going to do the same thing because I don't have a name property in input. So let me go ahead and put the name attribute here, and I'm gonna have the same name. It has to be the exact same thing, right? I call it to do here, so I have to call this one to do as well. So event.target.name is going to be to do, which is this, which will be updated with the target.value. And if I save this, and if I go here in the inspect, in the components app, and there the state, and if I do like this, you see that immediately it changes as well. Okay, cool. All right, so we have a way of having grabbing the letters that we are putting in the input. Now, what else do you want to do? We also want to change this. We also want to add like this value, because we want initially this input value to be curly brace, this dot state dot to do. This is what we want, the value, input value, to be like empty string, right? Because this is what it is. Because after we submit this, we can then set the state of this back to empty string. Because right now, if I write something and if I click on add, it's refreshing, which will take care of it, but it's still going to be there. You'll see what I mean in a moment. But we are going to add a value property and just going to forcefully say that, hey, just take whatever the state is here, which is initially on the page load is going to be empty string. All right, so we grab this. Now we grab this, we put it in the to-do state. Now we are going to work on this add. So if I click on submit, that to-do should go and add it to this to-do array. So to do this, I have a button which will be submitted. So in the form, I'm going to have another event listener, which will be on submit. On submit equals to curly brace, and here I'm going to create another method, and I'm going to call this handle submit. So if I save this, we got our handle submit. Let's create handle submit same way. Okay, is also going to create, it's going to get the event here, because as you can see, if I click on here, the page refreshes, because it's like just the default behavior of the browser. It tries to send this information to somewhere. So we are going to first going to say event.prevent default. Event.prevent default. If I save this, you see that now I'm clicking away and nothing's refreshing. Okay, that's preventing the default behavior. That's what we first going to do. All right, before we forget, we're gonna go ahead and bind our handle submit function, just like this. All right, so this dot handle submit equals to this dot handle submit bind this. Okay, so handle submit will first prevent event.prevent default, and the second thing it's going to do is going to push whatever we got, whatever it's stored in to do, to this to-dos. Now we know that we don't want to manually push this, like we can't like do like to this dot state dot to-dos dot push. We can't do that. So we would have to do this through this dot set state. And here it's a function, and we are dealing with an object here. So we're gonna say the object. Here we would have to do something like this, to-dos, because that's what we want to change, to-dos. And this is going to be, we want to push, because it's an object, right? So we want to push a similar object. So the first one will be content. And the content will be this dot state, state dot to do. Okay, then we will add an ID Now, this ID has to be unique. So I cannot create just like a 3. You know what I mean? So every time it's going to add something, it will try to add 3 ID to every to do, and that will make not unique, obviously. So let me go ahead and create a function here really quickly that will just create, give me just a random number. So I'm gonna just create a function here called UID. In fact, I'm going to say UID is actually a really good package. You can use that one as well, but I'm going to make my own function just for this reason. So I'm going to say math, I'm going to math.floor. So in here, I'm going to use, I am going to use, again, another math dot, then that's going to be random. The math dot random function, it gives you a random number from 0 to 1. You probably know this. So, and then here I'm going to multiply with a random whatever number, right? If I save this, okay. If I save this now, you see it's giving you an error because I didn't put in anything here, but this will return a random number. Okay, every time I click on it. So let's go ahead and take this and put this right here, ID, and then I believe that's about it. Now, if I save this, now there is an issue, there is a problem. Let's see if it works though. At this point, if I add something, let's say, I'm gonna delete all this ASTS, whatever I just put. If I, let's say, learn CRA, which is create React app, if I do this, I'm going to open the inspect and I'm going to show console here and see if it gives us any type of error. All right, so add. There you go. We got a lot of error. Now it's saying this state.todos.map is not a function. Okay, it's saying that, hey, this is not a function. When we're doing this dot set state to do, like changing set state, right, to do's, we are completely erasing. So as of right now, we are just doing like, hey, this is the object. We are completely erasing all this that here already, and we are replacing that with whatever this one has to be. Okay. So we can't do that. We have to preserve what we have here and then add onto it. And this is how we're going to do it. And since this one is, oh, another mistake we did is that to-dos is actually an array. That's why it was giving you a problem that, hey, map, it's not a function because you are now replacing with an object, and map doesn't work on object. All right. So let's see again if we do inspect, and then if we do not console, it does give you all sort of errors right here. We're gonna go to the components and see the to-dos right here, this two, and try to add something, which is to do right here. And if I add it, you see that it's getting entirely replaced. So you take a look that it is all the other ones are gone. So it's only give you this. Okay, so the first issue was because I forgot to add the square bracket, making it an object, and that's why this was yelling at me, map, and that's why I like React so much, because it gives you, it yells at you like this is something wrong. You should look at it that, hey, map is only for array, but you're giving an object. And here it is like just changing everything that it was and then replacing that. So because again, we are working on array, we do have, so the first we can, what we're gonna do is first, we use something called spread array. So I'm gonna say spread, and then I'm going to spread all that is there. And then, so we already say that, hey, first, this dot state, I'm gonna say the first to-dos, it's an array, right? Here, first take all those that exist in there and then add another object on top of it. So now if I save this, now let's take a look. If I say learn, let's say this right here, suggested, React, add, there you go. We got it. Learn classes. There you go. It's now adding it. We can even check in our component and your to-do section right here. You see we have now 1, 2, 3, 4 to-dos in here. All right. So hopefully it makes sense. I'm going to keep working on this. We're going to make it even better. I want to add a delete function. I want to add like a toggle function here. So we are just going to go a little faster right now, but hopefully it makes sense, right? We are creating a to-do first state to capture what is in the form, and then we also created an array of each object which has the to-do with an ID, and then we are just pushing the new one with the onSubmit method that we created, that to-do to to-dos, by keeping what the array already had with the spread array. And then the second attribute second object we are giving that, okay, the first object is whatever we had, and the second object would be the new one with the content of this dot state to do and ID of a new unique ID. All right. Okay, so next feature we're gonna add is something of like a done property, completed. So if I click on here, I want to add a CSS that it's gonna say that it's gonna do like a strike through. Okay, so that's what we're gonna do. Well, let me do one thing. So you see that I added learn classes, but it's still there. I want this one to be empty, and this is the reason why we added value this dot state to do, because when this is done, okay, when this is done, when I'm clicking here, it's going through, it's first preventing the default behavior, then creating the UID, then set state, putting the UID, and when it's all done, I want to this dot set state, and this time to do, I want to set the to do to empty string again. Now, if you say that if I do learn CRA add, it's now vanishes because we put this dot state to do is going to take this one, and we are setting this to an empty string after we click on here. Okay, great. Now let's take a look at the toggle function. So for that class, let me go ahead and import the app.css. And this is how you add a CSS file. You just basically give it a relative path. / means we are in the current folder, which is like siblings, app CSS siblings. So current folder, and grab app.css, which is right here. So save this right here. So if I go to app.css, save app.css, and I'm going to just create a class called done, and here all I'm going to do is text, I'm going to say text decoration line through, save. Okay, the class is there. Now if we go down to, all right, so we are going to create this one. I'm going to cut this, I'm going to get a div, and here I'm going to add a check mark. This is the check mark for, okay, this is done. Okay, so I'm going to say input, and type would be checkbox. Okay, there it is. So if I click on here, it should put a strike through on the list itself. All right, I am going to get rid of that thing. Okay, it annoys me all the time. All right, so we have this list item. So if I click on this check, it's going to put a strike through. It's going to add a class dynamically. So let's listen for this checkbox right here. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to say on change again, just like the input we did earlier. And this time we are going to create this dot. I'm going to say toggle. I'm going to name this a toggle method. Now save this, and let's go ahead and create this toggle. method. So I'm going to say toggle create this method, and before we forget, I am going to create this. So I'm going to call this toggle, save this. Okay, so toggle, what it will do, well, it will listen for the change here. It has to know which one we are clicking through, which one we want to add this strike through. Okay, so in this case, our ID will be ideal for this case. So I would need an ID. Now this ID will be provided, as you know, like if it's taken an input, this method takes an input. Now we are calling this method here. So this one should also get the input, which is going to be the to-do ID. So I'm going to say that this to-do ID is the one that I want to strike it. You cannot do something like this, right? It's just not gonna work. In this case, in fact, let me show you. Let me console log the ID here. So if I inspect, you see that nothing happens. It doesn't work. And in this special case, anytime you have to provide a parameter here, you have to actually create an arrow function. Now this is the only case I use an arrow function, okay? And that's going to be like this. So an arrow function, and this will allows you to have an to-do ID. So if I save this, now there you go. That ID is 1 and the second one ID is 2. Okay, so if you ever have to pass in a parameter like this, an argument like this, then you have to create an arrow function when you're calling, and we are calling this with the to-do ID. Okay, now this is the method we are going to create. Okay, so based on the ID, we're going to do something. So what we are going to do now here, as you can see, that our state to-dos has a list, and the more we are going to add, it's going to have even more items in this to-dos. So we have to check which to-dos ID is equal to the ID that I checked. Okay, so we have to do like a condition that, okay, if this to-do ID equals to the ID that's given, then we are going to apply. We're going to change this here. We're going to change this here. Now, what do we want to change? For this, we are going to add another property, and that's called done. And initially it's going to be false. All right. We're going to add another property, and that's going to be false done property. Okay, let us do this here as well, because whenever we are creating one, we are also going to create that. And initially is going to be false because it's not done yet. And this is what we're going to toggle it. So if the ID is equal to the to-do ID that's been provided, then we're going to check against the state to-dos and switch this done property to true. Okay, and let's see. Let me show you how I'm going to do this here. I'm going to create a new to-dos because we don't want to ever directly modify this. We want to create, I'm going to create this. I'm going to just map through this one again. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to create a variable called updated to-dos. Okay, updated to-dos, and that's going to be this dot state dot to-dos dot map. Okay, which will give me a single to-do. And here I'm going to make that change, make that check. So if this to-do ID is equal to this ID right here, right? Then return all the to-do, all the information that's in the to-do. That means we have three information, right? Content, ID, and done. So I want return. So this is going to be updated to-do. So we're going to take all the to-dos that's in the array, and then we're going to update that. We're going to check which to-do by mapping each one of them has the matches ID with the given ID. And if it does match that, but that's the one I want to switch the done to true. So the first, I want to say that keep everything else just because of this. And then I'm going to say comma. But for the done property, I want to just do like this. To do dot done. For the done property, I'm going to just flip whatever the to do was. So if it was true, turn it to false. If it was false, turn it to true. Okay, else return the to-do. Okay, so we're gonna check first if the to-do ID is the same as ID, then it's gonna return everything else, but with flipped done, which is gonna be false initially, it's gonna turn into true, and that, or if it doesn't match, then just return whatever you have. Okay, and then we are going to set. I'm gonna call our set state again. And here we're going we're going to update the to-dos with our new to-do. So that way it's going to show up right here. Oh, this one has to be right here after the updated to-dos. Okay, moment of truth. So if we do right now, but let's see, check something here. Now, based on this, we're going to add a class. And this is only going to check. Now, let's see class. As you can see that when I create a class, I'm going to create something called class name. And that's because CSS has a class, but JavaScript also has a class that we are working on right now. So because of that, JSX requires you to name the class as a class name. Okay, so we're going to say class name, and this is how you add a class. Now, you can just directly add it just like CSS, like in the double quotation, but I want this more dynamic. Okay, so I'm going to run some JavaScript. So I'm going to create a curly braces here. I'm going to first see that the to-do that I'm getting, and this to-do is getting from state that to-do, which is getting updated in our toggle function. So if I click on this checkbox, it's updating our set state based on what our logic right here, and then that state to-dos we are mapping through and showing up. So I'm going to say right now, I'm going to say to-do dot done property. So this is available to us. Now, if that's true, add the done class that we created here. So if that's true, add a done class, or add nothing. You can just do null, or you can just do like empty string, whatever. I'm just going to do null here. So if I save this, now let's see if it works. There you go. If you check it, uncheck it, now it is doing a strike through. Okay, so marking this is done. Awesome. All right, so first we created an input, and we did an onChange function or method here, and we are giving the ID. So based on the ID, we are creating this method here. We are creating a new updated list of array collection, where we are basically checking whether the ID was the one that was clicked. And then if it was, then we are just flipping the done. Otherwise, we're just returning the to-do. And then we are set stating with this updated to-dos. So that's what's going on with the toggle. All right, so last up, let's create a delete function. So here, I'm going to just underneath the li, I'm going to create a button. And in the button, I'm going to just call this a delete here. Save. So as you can see here, it's delete. So now so if I click on delete, this should delete this from the list. Okay. So first of all, we obviously need an onClick event listener. And here we are going to create another method, and we are going to call this method is delete. Okay, now this delete is going to work similar to what we did with our toggle, because we also going to utilize our ID, because we want to delete the one that the ID matches from the array itself. So in that case, I'm going to create an arrow function again, because I would have to pass the ID here. So I'm going to say todo.id, just exactly like what we did here. So I'm going to say this.delete todo.id, and now here we are going to create that method for delete. So right under the toggle, we're going to say delete. And before I forget, I will go ahead, bind this. Save this. Okay, so delete will also get an ID. And for the delete method, we are just going to run a filter higher order function. So this is what we're going to do. We are going to do this.set state. And we are getting the object. Okay, so we are dealing with the object. And where it is. Okay, so in this object, we are going to update the property, the value of the to-dos property. So here I'm going to say this dot state dot to-dos. We're going to run a filter function, filter, and it's just going to be simply, we're going to say it's going to give us a to-do, and if todo.id is not equal to ID, then it's going to return. So the delete function, much like the toggle function, doing the same thing, instead of creating an updated to-dos, because here you're clicking on and strike through happening, but you're still showing that. The delete, you are not going to show it at all. So all we are doing this is that we are setting the state we have in here and filtering through it and saying whichever to do ID is equal to the ID that's been clicked. So if I click here, this button is going to grab the ID for the list of that. And if that ID matches, then except for that to do, show other to-dos. Now, if I save this, see if it works. There you go. Each one is gone. So if you learn, if you add learn CRA again, if you learn React again, if you learn JSX again, see, we can toggle this and we can delete this as well. All right, so this has been a to-do app, hopefully, because most of this factor, the logic that I showed you, are going to be useful in any of the project that you work, because form is one of the most used element in web development. All right, so this is how you're. Okay, so we have created our to-do in class component. Now we are going to learn about functional component, and we're gonna try to do this exact thing using a hook called useState. Okay, that's what I'm going to show you. I'm gonna keep the app.js here as is. What I'm going to do is I'm going to create another file, and I'm going to call this, let's say, functional app.js. All right, functional app.js. I'm not going to create a separate CSS file because I'm just going to use this one. So for a functional app.js, I'm going to export this. So let me make this bigger here so you can see. Okay, so I can create, if you see that I have an extension. If I do RFC, it will give me this functional snippet, right? The functional component. So I'll just have to delete the upper line. If you want this, so this extension is called ES7 plus React Redux React Native snippets. So once you have this, then you'll be able to have the shortcuts like RFC, React's functional component. All right, so this is good. So I'm going to import, which is the app.css, like that, because I'm going to use the same logic, same thing that we did in the app.js right here, but in a functional way, and you'll be able to see like it's going to be much more easier and less code. Now, in order for us to see in the functional component here, I would import, in fact, I would import functional app. That's going to be from this functional app, and I'm just going to replace this. And if I save it, you see right now I'm only getting functional app. All right, that's good. Let me make this. All right, so now we have just a div, just say functional app right here. And you can also write export default right before the function as well. So like we said, we are going to first create a headline that will come from a state. Now in a functional component, you can have a state with a hook, and it's called use state. And we have to import that just like we imported component from React in the class component. We would have to import use state hook from React in order for us to create a state. Okay, so here in the div, what I will have is an h1 that would just say task manager. All right, so now this is hard coded, but I want to make it a state so that it's going to come from the state. So in order to do that, I have to create within this function. Okay, everything would have to be within this function, and I'm just going to create. This is the syntax and this is how it is. You just have to learn this. So the state name, so that's going to be, I'm going to call this, let's say message. All right, the first one is going to be just a message. Okay, and the second one is going to be the set, and then we'll give it exact the same name, set message, equal to, then we are going to use our use state, and I'm going to invoke this, and this function right here, when we are invoking, it is going to take the initial value of this variable. So you can think of like this. So const, you open square brackets, and the first one is going to be the variable that you're creating, and then the second one is going to be the setter function, like set state, that in the class component they gave us. Here we are creating our own set message, so it is only going to set whatever, change whatever value that the message has. Okay, so in here I'm going to give this information, so I'm going to say task manager, and instead of hard coding here, I'm going to again open up curly braces so I can write some JavaScript here. And unlike class component, because we are in a function, we don't have to use this anymore. So here I can just simply put this message here, save this. You see that I'm still getting the task manager. If I just add like a couple of 3 exclamation mark, you see that we get that as well. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and delete that. So this is how you create a state. And here I'm never going to change this one, so I don't even need this set state. But this is how you write if you wanna in the future, if you wanna change this. Okay, so I can just have just a message which will create a state for us, and it's gonna show that. All right, so let's create our form, because we are going to do the exact same thing, exact to do, but in a functional component. So form, we had a label, and we give it a label of to do, and then we will have our input type text. We will do ID, and that has to be the same. We are going to give it a name as well. That's going to be the same name. And this was the case that it has to match the state as well, right? So we are going to create another state. So I'm going to say const, and here I'm going to say to do, and we are also going to have set to do because that's what we are setting. Use state, and initially is going to be empty string. So this is, we are creating this particular state, and it is similar to what we did right here. Okay, so we grab the information that was put in the input and we add it to this state right here, to do. We are doing the exact same thing. So we are creating a state, which is the to do. Okay, and we are also passing the set to do function, and then it is invoking use state. Basically, this is a state. And here we are using the name to do, and I'm going to say a placeholder, and we're going to say at to do like this. And just beneath input, we're going to have our button. That would be, I'll just say at, which will submit our button. Okay, so let's go ahead and create another state, another piece of state, which was array. In this case, we're going to have the exact same thing. We're going to call this to do's, and then set to do's, because we would have to set the value of this one as well. And then we are going to use state, and here in the use state we are going to have an array, and in that array we are going to have an object. And I'm just going to simply copy this, right? I'm going to simply copy this one and write this one like this, and then we want to do another one, but this one will be, let's say, JSX, and ID would be 2. All right, save it. So we created exactly same thing, but this is how you're going to create state in your functional component. You have a use state and you create to do's. That's gonna, and a setter function, set to do, and this is the initial value. We are hard coding the initial value right now, which is an array of object. Each one has a content, has an ID, and has a done property. Great. And here let's show this on the site. And to show it, I'm actually going to create a div, and then I'm going to, now here again, we don't have to do that this dot state dot like we did it here. If you go down, this dot state dot to do's dot map, we don't have to do this anymore. We just simply say to do's dot map is going to give me a single to do, and we will return a list which will have, again, it's going to have a curly brace because it's meant to do dot content. Now if I see, look at that, it is showing up, learn React, learn JSX, and you don't see this the bullets and everything because we are using the same CSS. All right, let me go ahead and add the key prop as well, because if you inspect this and go to the console, you see that we are getting the same key prop error. So we are going to add to do.id as well here, and then inspect it again. And I would have to give it a refresh. There you go. That error is now gone. Okay, so we have it. Now let's go ahead and grab whatever information we are putting in the input. And we are going to grab this using an event listener, which is on change. So here in on change, again, we are going to create, now we are in a function, so we are going to create another function. So on change, and we don't have to use this anymore. So we're just going to say handle change like that. We don't even have to invoke the function. So as you can see, it's right here. It's giving you, it's basically yelling at you that, hey, you put in handle change function, but it's not, has not been defined. So let's go ahead and define this. So then we are going to define this just above the return statement. But this time I'm going to use the function keyword because we are not in a class anymore. And here I'm going to, is going to take the event and And let's just do the same exact thing. We're gonna do console.log event save. Now let's see if that works. I'm gonna go to the console, clear everything. Now if I do this, you see that it is immediately working. Now let me do .target.value. If I save this, now if I do v, you see now it is console logging everything. Now notice that we did not have to use this keyword. We did not have to bind this or anything like that. So it's really simple to use state. All right, so let's go ahead and now change our to-do. Let's put the event.target.value in our to-do. Now we can easily do it by calling setToDo, which is a function, and this function will just grab the value and we'll add it. So we're gonna say event.target.value right here. So if I save this, that's all I have to do. Now if I go to inspect again, and this time I am going to use the component, the extension. So functional app, and here's your state, add this, and you see that it is now updating the to-do with the set function. All right, simple. All right, the next up is going to be, so I'm going to submit, like I have to have like on submit function, and that's going to be an on the form here. So I'm going to say on submit, and I'm going to create another function, which is handle submit. So if I save this, and again, it's going to yell at me, but that's okay. I'm going to create this function like function handle submit. And here, so for handle submit, again, it's going to take the event. The first thing we're going to do is event.prevent default, because otherwise it's going to refresh the page on us, and like that. Great. And then we are going to create the function that we want to create a unique ID. So let's go ahead and do that. So function UID, and that will return, it's going to return math.floor, it's going to return math.random, and I will time this with some ridiculous number. Okay, so now we have to use this .state. So we have to use, in this case, set to-dos, because that's what we want to push in. That's the array, that's the collection. So set to-dos will have a function, and here we're going to say, what do we have? Well, the first thing we have the array. So let's go ahead and define that array. And in that array, just like we did in the class component, we don't want to update the whole thing. We want to add it. So we want to first return whatever there is, all right? Whatever there is already. So keep that. And the second one, I want to add in an object form. I'm going to say content. Now that's going to be to do, right? Because that's this state. And then ID will have this one, UID, and the done property. So once you're adding this, initially, of course, it's going to be false. Now, if I save this, now let's see if we can add something. So learn CRA. There you go. It's adding. So let's go ahead and just clear this, right? So let's do like learn HTML, and you see that it's not clearing. So let's do that. The same process. We are going to put a value here, and we're going to just say to do. It should take the value of to do. And once we're submitting this, once we're setting this set to dos, after that, we are going to set to do to an empty string like that. So now if I add, let's say CSS, you see that it is clearing up for us. So that's great. Okay, so next up, we are going to toggle. So we want to create an input where we're going to click it, check it, and it's going to toggle whether it's done or false. So in order to do that, let's go ahead and add just I'm going to again cut this, create a div, and here we will just add the input, and this one will be checkbox. Now let's save this. You see that, okay, each one has a checkbox. All right. And here we are also going to add an event listener, which was like on change. And this one will need to pass in the ID. So that's why here the same process we did in the class, that in order for me to pass a parameter or argument to a function when it's been called, I have to use the arrow function. So I can do that. So it's going to be, I'm going to call this same function toggle, which will have todo.id. Okay, now it's squiggly line because toggle is not defined. So let's go ahead and define that. So again, function toggle, which will take an ID and we'll do similar thing that we did in the class. We are going to create updated to-dos, okay, which will be to-dos.map, which will give us a single to-do, and there we are going to check if to-do.id is equal to the ID that they passed, then return object, because this is an object. You're going to return everything that to-do has, except if it does have a done property, then change that to whatever to-do.done has, the opposite of to-do done. So if it's false, then it's going to turn into true. If it's true, then it's turning into false. Else, just return to-do. Okay. And after this, we are going to use set to-dos with updated to-dos, with a new to-do. Go ahead and see if it works. And the CSS is already in place. So if I click on here, it should, and it's not. So let's take a look what's happening. One thing is that the key prop is still, because I wrapped it with a div, so this key here has to be to the parent. So that way it knows which one has been changed. So if I refresh now, you see that that warning goes away. But it is not working with this. So if I click on here, that is because, of course, we did not add the class. So the app.css, the class done, we have to add it. So we are going to do same thing, class name, and instead of this, we are going to use a curly brace so we can do some JavaScript. So I'm going to say if to-do.done is true, then add done, otherwise just null. And if I save this, now if I try, there we go, it is working as expected. All right, cool. Now the next step is to delete function, which is pretty simple as well. So here we are going to create a button which will just say delete, save, and in that button we'll have an on-click function which will take the to-do ID. So we're going to create an arrow function here, and we're going to call this, let's say we're going to call remove. Okay, so here and here it's going to take to-do.id. Save. Now let's go ahead and create now the remove function finally. So function remove, which will take an ID, and here we are simply going to do set to-dos, and the set to-dos, we are going to get to-dos, all of the to-dos, but we are going to invoke a higher order function called filter. and filter will give us a single to do, and it is going to return if the to-do.id is not equal to the ID. Is gonna return that. So let's see, if I click on delete, you see that it's been deleted, and I can add it one more time like this. I can mark it as done. I can delete it. There is our to-do app using functional component and a class component. All right, it's been a long video. I don't know if I'm going to keep it this long or break it down. I'll decide it later. Probably I'll keep it all together. But the next video, I will show you some other hooks. So most of the cases you'll be using useState and another hook called useEffect. So I will be talking about lifecycle methods in class components and also as lifecycle hooks for functional component, where we will create a fun little project where we'll be fetching some data and show up on the website. Hopefully you will enjoy this. Thank you so much if you watched the entire video, and if this video helped you in any way, please don't forget to like and share, and subscribe if you're not, if you want to check out my next videos. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.